I have a long and storied history with Starfield. This doesn't surprise anybody. I'm one of the 7 people still talking about the game. And you know what? I in my most recent video I did on the main channel, looking at the game a year later, I actually I tried to leave on a fairly positive note. I wanted people to watch that video and be like, you know what? Yeah, it's not great, but it's also not terrible. They did do a lot of stuff, because I don't think Starfield is terrible. I don't think it's even, I think parts of it are bad, but I don't think the package on the whole is bad. I think you can have fun with Starfield, and I've said that since my launch review. The point is, I'm not going to sugarcoat the problems or pretend like there aren't problems just to preserve feelings, right? I think that what we're about to look at is potentially an example of why that approach can be very, very helpful. They've added things like the rover, which was not originally planned to be in the game. People would ask Todd before Starfield came out, hey, what's the, are there plans for vehicles? Are there vehicles in the game to run around planets faster or drive around planets faster? And he said, nope. It's designed, just like our other games, for you to run on foot, and then we have boost packs to help you with that, but it's designed to be explored on foot. Then they pull a 180 within a year of launch, and they add vehicles, like a rover, for you to drive around. So they're making changes based on feedback, even if those changes go directly against their original design ideas, which I think you have to give them credit for. Because one of the big frustrations people have had with BGS is they feel like they can voice frustrations or problems with their games, and they just don't acknowledge it. They just focus on what the fans are saying, and they ignore the criticism, which is no way to make a good game. That is a recipe for making the same garbage over and over and over again. So I think with this, they have potential to continue improving the game. This DLC marks the first instance of a major content drop for the game. And if you remember Fallout 4, the first DLC for that was called Far Harbor. I don't know if you guys played Far Harbor, but basically Far Harbor is like a really, really solid narrative DLC. Okay, like it is all about the synths and trying to come up with whether they are, like, sentience means life, or whether that should be preserved, or if it's just the illusion of life if somebody presents themselves as sentient. It's very interesting. It explores like the Turing test and all that stuff. It's actually pretty good. And in many ways, it directly answers one of the main critiques of Fallout 4, which is that people felt as though the story and the writing was not very deep. It was all very surface level. It just didn't really push it. And that is something that I will give Bethesda credit for, is that often with their first DLC or expansion, they listen to the feedback and they try to give people what they were hoping for. Even with Fallout 76, people said, hey, we want NPCs. We want to see how this world would be if people were able to talk to each other and interact. Can you give us that? And they added, I forget the exact name of it, but it was like Commonwealth or I don't remember what it was called, but it was a big expansion that added in NPCs to the game, and that totally changed Fallout 76. So yeah, I guess technically, Caleb, you're right. Like, was it the first DLC? It's the first like story expansion. They did a bunch of littler DLCs like to add smaller things to Fallout 4 before that Far Harbor DLC, but you get what I mean. It's the first like narrative expansion. This could be good. I have not seen any of this. I saw that they dropped the deep dive trailer an hour ago. I have not pulled it up. Well, I've pulled it up. I've not watched it. I don't know what they say. So I don't know if this is going to answer any of my concerns, but my hope is that this is a DLC that, for one, focuses on like handcrafted, hand-built, not procedural stuff. I want to hear that they are exploring some deeper, darker narratives. And I hope maybe they introduce some more creative integrations of different gameplay systems, whether that's like zero gravity stuff. I don't really expect them to use the rover that much because it's so new, but maybe they use the rover a bit. But I'd like them to have some way to integrate different gameplay systems into the DLC, so it's not just running around shooting stuff again. I like a little bit more depth. So let's see. Buckle up, buckaroo. Xbox.
Hey everyone, thanks
Hi.
for joining us today. It's been an incredible journey since Starfield launched last year. I want to thank all of you for making it the biggest launch in Bethesda Game Studios history.
I mean, you would also hope it's the biggest one, considering it was basically free for like 30 million people with Game Pass. Just pointing that out, but I digress.
Continued support and feedback drive us to making Starfield the best experience possible. Since launch, we've added new features, technical enhancements, fresh content, and the newly released Rev 8, Starfield's first ever land vehicle. Now we're expanding Starfield's galaxy with a brand new, completely handcrafted world and deep new storyline.
Okay, deep storyline, handcrafted. We're on a good track. We're on a good track. It's funny because in some ways it's like, what do I want from this DLC? The opposite of what Starfield was meant to be, which is like huge procedural, not handcrafted systematic stuff. It's very funny that that's kind of what people are starved for. But maybe this balances it out. I don't know.
This September, we're launching Starfield's first major expansion, Shattered Space. Today, we're giving you the first look at the mysterious homeworld of House Faroon. So let's dive in and explore.
Dive.
The fate of our house was written among the stars. The great serpent tells us there is nothing to fear.
Do not fear. Not more.
At least, not for those who walk the path. You will rise as Varun.
Like basically a culty situation is what we're dealing with. Interesting. Okay. They're showing the rover present.
We loved Starfield's massive open galaxy, but from early on in our planning, we knew we wanted to introduce a more secluded and handcrafted location, similar to what you've seen from our past expansions.
It does kind of make me wonder if while they were developing Starfield, they were starting to go a little stir crazy. Because I would imagine if you are a team that like really specializes in handcrafted stuff, but you're having to build a game where you don't get to do much of that, I bet just creatively they were starved for the opportunity. So maybe this is like a product of that. Products of passion are usually pretty good. You can't fake passion, and if people are passionate about what they're doing, often the product ends up better. So maybe that is maybe that's a good thing.
There's so much mystery to House Faroon, and because they've so thoroughly isolated themselves, it made them the perfect faction to explore in a completely self-contained experience.
And so you arise, one of the promised of House Faroon.
From the minute you arrive on Varun Kai, the story never sends you off planet. You're free to leave at any time, but the story is fully centered around life on the Varun homeworld.
Everything you discover, every location you visit, every side mission you seek out, it all tells the story of what happened here and how the Varun people have survived, cut off from the comforts of the settled systems and the rest of humanity.
Vindicator, Harbinger, Reverend,
Promised.
One of our main themes throughout the base game is humanity's search for knowledge. Shattered Space is still about that search, but it's also about what happens when it goes too far. It's a very extreme pursuit, and it has backfired horribly for the people of House Faroon.
My brother Qasim has been missing for days. I'm beginning to worry that something terrible has happened to him.
Before the start of Shattered Space, a secret experiment involving grav drive technology went terribly wrong.
It resulted in a massive tear in the fabric of space-time.
Emil,
that swallowed a significant portion of the Varun capital of Dazra. You arrived just a few weeks after the Vortex incident. It's still very fresh in everyone's minds. There's a massive crater in their city. Nothing has been reconstructed. People are still searching for missing loved ones.
Supplies are limited. There is so much work to be done.
The Scaled Citadel, the seat of power for the Varun government, is now trapped within a strange field of energy. Among those missing is Anasco Varun, leader of the Varun people and speaker for the Great Serpent. In his absence, the minor houses that make up House Varun are all vying for control over the faction's future.
You know, hearing like the Great Serpent, they have all this space magic stuff going in. It again makes that comparison they made during the marketing cycle where they said, no, this isn't Fallout in space. This is Skyrim in space. Makes that comparison much more clear. You know, it makes it make more sense because like it's not attempting to be grounded. They're adding in magical stuff and supernatural stuff because I think that that's just kind of what they find more interesting. And honestly, magic, it's kind of like space travel or time travel rather in stories. You can fill in a lot of gaps with just magic, you know? You could just like, oh, this doesn't really make sense. Well, it's because the magic works in mysterious ways. Or if you need something to give you a quest that's like weirdly specific, you can just be, oh, it's what the Great One desires. You know, it's great. It's great if you're trying to write something and you don't want to work too hard. As like somebody that DMs like a D&D campaign for my friends, it's like the easiest way to just get out of like some of the heavy lifting when it comes to originating stories or plot hooks, you know?
Zealots were once a part of Varun society.
Like we've all done it.
Continue the Serpent's crusade. They'll demand an inordinate...
Wait, did you see that? That's cute. Their helmet is painted like a snake head. Do you see this? Look at this person's helmet. And then this person's helmet kind of does the same thing. They have it painted like a snake head. That's just cute.
Continue the Serpent's crusade. They'll demand an inordinate amount of credits or firearms. Worst case, a seat at the High Council or even the reinstatement of their house.
Oh God, controller gunplay. It hurts.
All must serve. Set me free. All must serve. All must serve. Set me free. All must serve. Save me.
Varun Kai and Dazra City are like no other location in the base game.
From its inception, House Varun has been driven by a singular, unique vision. Because of this, Varun Kai has a completely distinct visual identity. We say it's very alien. You'll see this in the extraterrestrial landscape, gravity anomalies, and much more.
Okay, that's cool.
Varun Kai is located in the Kavnik system, and it's not the friendliest environment. They believed the Great Serpent led them to Varun Kai, and their whole purpose in being here is to await its return.
You have no concept of what the Great Serpent demands of us. All must serve.
It's a dangerous planet, and a lot of the people have retreated to Dazra in order to survive and protect their culture and their way of life. Now you'll find areas of the planet that were abandoned and have since been taken over by Zealots, Spacers, and Crimson Fleet. And humans aren't the only dangers in the Badlands of the planet. With the line between reality and the vortex breaking down, creatures from the other side can slip through, like the vortex horror. When you disturb the barrier between our world and theirs, they can sense it, creating these honestly terrifying ambush scenarios.
In the base game, there's a lot of focus around ranged gun combat. You can engage in a firefight from way in the distance.
shattered space, we're closing that distance. Space is scary. Part of getting that across is amping up the aggression and the chaos of combat.
As you explore the city of Dazra and the surrounding planet, you'll learn the truth of what happened, become entangled in the political feud between the minor houses, and ultimately decide the fate of House Varun, a fate that could affect the rest of the settled systems.
We can restore the intended order of things.
Thank you for joining us for a closer look at Shattered Space. We worked hard to make this a journey you won't forget. We're incredibly grateful for your support and passion. Stay tuned for more updates as we head toward launch on September 30th.
I mean, I don't hear any like particular narrative hooks that I find that intriguing. Oh, they're gonna give you 1,000 creation credits. Wow, bada bing, bada boom. So, I personally don't hear anything narratively that's like particularly intriguing. It's like, oh, this experiment went wrong, and so now there's more space magic. Like, okay, whatever, but at least they're doing something different. You know, even if I don't find the story, at least at the outset, particularly compelling, maybe there is something there that I'm just not aware of. It doesn't sound particularly interesting narratively, but you know, they're shaking it up a little bit. They are trying to answer one of the frustrations people had with Starfield combat by making aggression increase and by really pushing speed and how kinetic the combat can be, which I think is fine. Most of the levels that I'm seeing, like, they're either the same sort of interior spaces or they're showing like these pretty flat open areas, which I think that's just the limitation of the engine and hardware. I think that's just kind of what we have. Spaces like this, you know, altars and stuff, that seems at least moderately interesting, but I just don't really know the scope or scale or anything like that here. But I'm hopeful that they can do something really wacky and crazy, and that this is basically an answer to some of the frustrations I'm sure they also had as devs while they were going through the process of making the game. It does look like there's even a graphical artifact here. Yeah, look at that. There's a plane. Just a little 2D plane that's sticking out of the ground over here. I don't know what that's supposed to be. It doesn't look like it's supposed to be there. But we've got like little, like a settlement over here, like a little encampment or something. We've got this bigger thing. We've got like an altar. It seems like they're going to basically explore this cult that has isolated themselves here, which honestly, I'm sure it's interesting to explore that narratively, but also it's kind of convenient because you don't have to reference anything else that's happened in terms of role play or in terms of the story elsewhere in the game and other planets, because they're like, oh, well, we're just super isolated. So again, it's just a built-in way of getting around that. The thing with like Far Harbor is I feel like there were questions asked in the story that were in the main game story that were answered or at least explored in the DLC. I don't know what questions this aims to answer. In terms of the DLC, in terms of what we're hearing narratively, it seems like this is just a cult that's isolated, and then they had an experiment that went wrong, and now there's space magic leaking out, and then like rifts and people from other dimensions basically coming out. Could be weird, could be funky, could still be interesting, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be the narrative heavy DLC I was hoping for. Maybe it ends up being really, really phenomenal, but I don't personally see that yet. I do think it's interesting that Todd is just nowhere to be found. I understand he's not the creative director on this. It's this guy they showed later. They described him as the creative lead. Alan Nunez, maybe? He's the creative lead. So it's like Todd's nowhere to be found, but I think it's because he's not working on this. He's doing Elder Scrolls and the Fallout show and all that. But is there an 8-hour video coming up on this, Luke? No, I mean, it's like I said to you guys the other day, the odds of us getting, like, I don't even know if they'll do review codes, honestly, but even if they do, the odds of us getting one are shockingly low. But then again, the odds were low that we'd get a review code for the base game anyways. So you never know. Maybe they'll surprise us, but even then, I don't know if they'll even do reviews for this. They might just drop it because they don't really need reviews. The other thing is that I've heard people talk about is what, like, are they going to even bother really marketing this or pushing this? Because a lot of people already bought the premium, whatever, deluxe edition to play the game early last year. So a lot of people already have this. So it's not like they have to really sell it to people. It's not like they're trying to push for those $30, $40 copies. There's going to be some people, certainly, but a lot of the people who are still playing Starfield today almost certainly were the hardcore fans that bought the early access and therefore have this in the season pass. So I don't know how much they'll feel the need to market it. But at the very least, they're doing this deep dive. They'll drop it on the 30th. My guess would be it's like probably anywhere from 7 to 10 hours in terms of narrative stuff, handful of quest lines, some new locations and stuff. But after seeing this deep dive, this probably doesn't shock anybody, but this doesn't really excite me that much. They're doing a couple things that I would hope to hear, like hearing that they're trying to focus on handcrafted environments, which is what they tend to be really good at. That's very promising. They're doing cool things like integrating the zero gravity stuff with these little bubbles. That's the only instance I can see of them integrating different mechanics into exploration. Maybe that ends up being really, really cool. Maybe it just ends up being like, okay, yep, it's kind of like a weird ladder you can climb. I'm not sure, but there's that. Other than that, like, I was hoping to hear more interesting narrative stuff because I feel like the narrative side of Starfield was really weak. But it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot here in that department that's like really captivating, at least for me. And honestly, given the trailer, seeing that there's only like a couple of weird artifacting things that you can point out if you know what you're looking for, honestly, a pretty solid polished job. You know, there's this one, the camera moves fast enough you don't spot it unless you kind of know what you're looking for. But hopefully it's just polished and it's good and solid and gives you a little bit more content, but I don't think it'll be that. I don't think it'll be that shocking. He took my thing.